Today we're going to be going over the MySQL object-oriented programming method for connecting to the Apache and MySQL server. And we're going to basically be connecting to the MySQL, creating a database, a table within that database. Then we're going to add the data that we have collected into the database or into the table. And then we're going to retrieve that data via HTML format. So this method is one of the most recent methods, and it uses PHP version 5 or up. So I believe that goes up to the most recent version, which I think is PHP 7. So we're first just going to go over a blank Acquia Dev desktop installation. So you're going to want to install it from this website, acquia.com/downloads. After that is done, you're going to open up the Acquia Dev desktop into an interface like this, and you're going to go down to the bottom left and you're going to click New Drupal Site. So just for the sake of learning purposes, we're just going to do a 8.1 Drupal site, and we're going to create that. So as this is downloading, you can go to Blackboard and pull the ISOM 244 files, the PHP database and PHP scripts that we will need for this tutorial. So we're actually going to place these files, so I have mine here on my desktop, and we're going to place these files within this site that we just created. So if we go to the local code here, so I think I've already did this before, so I have a little extra files here, but we're basically going to, let me first just get rid of this. Hold on 1 second. So we're basically going to wipe the site absolutely clean, and then we're going to place our files within that site. So here's 8.1, and we're going to create a archive folder. So like I said, we're going to wipe the site. So take all of these, and we're just going to put them in the archive folder. So now we have the 8.1 site, and it's kind of wiped out, so then we can take these PHP files that we already have made up, we can place them within that site. So basically, when we go to our local host, so if we go back to the dev desktop, we're then going to click local site. So this is going to open up the 8083 connection. So we don't want this up here. So that's trying to install the default Acquia site. And basically this directory that we have up here, 8083, that is going to open up. It's going to start from your home directory, so Nick Marchesalt. Let's go to the sites folder, which is the dev desktop that's created by the dev desktop. Into that folder, and then here's our site, 8.1.0. So that's the site we just created. We got rid of all the files and put our own files in there. So anything after this backslash that gets called is going to be pointing directly to these files or this area of the directory. So what we first want to do is we first want to connect to MySQL, because we can't do anything unless we're connected. So we're first going to call that file. So whatever your file name is for the SQL connection, so mine is mysqlconnect.php. So we're going to go ahead, type that up there, and then we're going to hit enter. So if everything goes well, it's going to say success, and then it says the port number, so 127.0.0.1. So now we are officially connected to the MySQL, where we can then go ahead and create the database. So I'm just going to open up that MySQL folder, or that file, and we're gonna go in through that file, and we're gonna see what's going on here. So in order to get that connection, we created a variable called DBC, which stands for database connection. And we're just going to set a couple parameters within that MySQL function. So we have our port, username, password, another Apache number 33067. And basically, if that database connection produces an error, it's going to report that error. So you can actually go ahead and type that error into Google and figure out why you're not connecting to MySQL. And then if not, so in this if statement, else it's going to echo success, and voila, you're connected to the MySQL. So we're then going to go ahead, so now that we're connected, we're going to call the next file in the list, which is going to be create the database. Awesome. So we have a success, and we have a message saying still connected to MySQL. And I have an error here because my database has already been created because I've already ran through this a couple times. So the database exists. Yours is going to display something a little different, maybe a successfully created database or whatever it's set down here in the file. So we're going to go to that PHP file. We're going to see how we created that database. So our first line here, we have include MySQL connected.php. Basically, that include statement is pulling that last file and, performing the statements within that file. So it's going to connect us to MySQL. And then we have an if statement here saying if database connection. So if we are connected to that database or that SQL connection that we just made, we're going to print still connected to MySQL. And then we're going to go ahead and create a SQL variable here. And within these quotes here, these double quotes, we have a create database, which is a SQL statement, and MyDB. So that would be the database name. So you can name that whatever. I just have it under MyDB for now. And then we have an if statement down here saying if the result is true, the database was created successfully, else you're going to echo error creating database. And then that database connection is going to give you that error, so you can kind of figure out what's going on within this this code and figure out where you went wrong with either logic or syntax. Just another small thing to point out, you might want to use a good editor for these PHP files so that you can make sure your brackets are in sync and your single and double quotes are all opened and closed. So I'm using Bluefish right now. That's on a Mac, and it's a completely free software, so I highly suggest that. Or if you're on Windows, Notepad++ is also another good one. Because if you open these files just in like regular Notepad, it's just going to be all black text, and it's going to be very hard to read. So I suggest using one of these editors. So we're going to go back up here. So we have our database created, and what we can actually do to make sure that it's created and we're not just getting this HTML text up here, we're going to go to the Acquia Dev desktop, and we're going to hit local database, so 810. So we're going to click that, and that's going to open up PHP MyAdmin, where you can manage your databases. So on the left here, we have MyDB, so that is the database we just created. So we don't have any tables or any data within that database, but at least we know it's over here on the side, has a database icon, and it's all set up properly. So we're going to go ahead and do the next file. So let's go back to our browser. So we have the database created. Now we need to create a table within our database. So we call the create table.php file, or whatever, create table file you have, or whatever it's called, and it's going to display the message if it's created successfully. So table member was created successfully. So we're going to go over back to PHP MyAdmin, and we're going to check this out. So let's refresh that. Voila. So we have our member table there, and we're going to click on it, and we have no data within it, but at least we know we have a member table, and you can see that there's columns there, but there's actually no data or columns within there. So let's take a look at that code just to break it down so we can have somewhat of an understanding of what's going on. So create table.php. So very similar up at the top from the previous files. So we have the database connection variable again, and that's doing a MySQL function with the parameters inside. The only note to add here is you need to specify your database name so that you connect to the MySQL, and then you select the database to create the table within. So same if statement right here, making sure the database connection is there, and if there's an error with connecting to the database, it's gonna, pull that up on the browser. And then as we go down, we get into some more SQL. So we have our SQL variable there created, SQL statement create table, and then member is the name of this table. And we just have some attributes in here. So we have member name, age, and member email, and you have to set the variable characters or big integers, depending on whether it's a string or integer. So we have all varchars here, and we specify that each one should not be null or empty. And we just set the primary key as member email for now. And then at the end of this, we have another if-else statement written in PHP, and that checks whether or not that table was created successfully. So if the database connection and query is true, it's created successfully, else you're going to echo error creating table, and then it's going to give you that error. So in our case, it was created successfully, so we're going to move on to the next step. So we have our table selected or created. So we're going to go back over here, and we're going to add data to the table. Because right now it's just a blank table, so all we have is, let's see. So we have columns here. So we have member name, age, member email. So that's exactly what we specified in the file, and that's what's there. So now we need to add data or fields to these columns here. So let's go back over here, and let's click or type in our next file, which is add data. So that's what mine is called. Yours could be different. We're going to click that. Records have been added successfully. So if we go back over to the local host PHP myadmin, we can actually physically see whether our data has loaded within the table. So we're going to refresh that, and let's click the member table, and voila, we have our member name, age, and email. So these are all the data within the adddata.php file that we had created. So let's take a look at that code and see how this information got within the table member within our database that was created. So let's go back to our Bluefish editor here, and we're going to open up add data. So same thing as before, database connection selects the database here. If there's a database connection error, it's going to report that. If not, it's going to keep going down the list into the SQL variable, and it's going to have an insert into member table statement. So we're going to insert into member name, age, and email. So basically, all this data is going to get passed through these parameters set up here, which was set in the previous file. So I just have some random data here. So I have names, I have numbers for age, and then I have random email addresses. So these are all the values. And then if these values have been added to the table member successfully, it's going to say records have been added successfully. Else, it's going to echo the error, and then it's going to give you the error to kind of see where you went wrong. So we have those added in, and so those are stored in the server right now. So the next step that we need to do is we need to pull all this data that's stored within the server, and we need to display it in an HTML format. A good example, a lot of students ask, why you need to learn this, or, why do you need PHP? Facebook actually uses PHP for, I believe, its main back-end programming language. So you could pretend these are comments or photos or likes, and basically all of them are stored within a server. And when someone goes to click on your profile, they need some way to retrieve this. They're not opening up PHP myadmin to check out comments or likes, so they need some way to retrieve it. So that's this next step that we're going to do. So we're going to call our select.php file is what mine is called, and we're going to select that. So when you click enter, there you go. We have all of our data, and it's going to get displayed in an HTML table format. So for an example, if you had a website and you needed to retrieve, this information, if you type in a couple names or something and click, like a button, a submit button, it could retrieve this information from a server. So it's not just static HTML. So it's pretty cool stuff. So let's check out that code within the select.php file. So pretty much same thing before. We're selecting the database, still connected to MySQL. It's going to check to see if we're still connected to the database, connection. And then we're going to have a couple variables down here. So we're going to select. So there's a select statement, member name, age, email, member email from the table member. And basically, this is going to echo. Here are the columns up here, and that's in table format. So you can see these are HTML tags, so it's going to echo it in HTML. If you didn't have these tags, it wouldn't pop up within a grid-like format. It would just be member name and all the text, and it would be quite boring. So you need those tags there if you want to make it look good. And here's the output data for each row. So basically we have a while loop here. So this is saying while the row equals result. So basically until this array, so let's go back to our add data. So until this reaches all the way to the bottom and there's no more values to add, then it's gonna, display all those values on a page like this. So it, kind of goes through each line and prints them within a table format. And once it reaches the end, so once it's, once it equals 0, it's gonna stop that loop. So that's basically what's going on there, and it's kind of echoing it like we said in table format. So here's the rows, so we have member name, age, member email, and then it's going to echo, there's the closeout table tag. So this basically is echoing all the values that we put in the add data.php file, and it's displaying them in a table format. So it's pretty cool, and this is kind of the end stage to this assignment for ISOM 244. So if you want to go back to these files and change the data or the columns, or change it to integers rather than strings or varchars, you can most certainly do that. So all of this code that was written within these files, they are all found on w3schools.com. So if you go to the left, and to click PHP and then go down to MySQL database. So here's our connection. So you can definitely recreate these files if you would like. Here's the create database. So there's everything you need for that. Insert data, and you can also go down and there's also try it outs that you can click and actually kind of manipulate them within the W3 Schools website to, see if you understand the syntax and the whole methodology behind it. So that's it, and I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something from it, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.